Send it on to everybody because it was, you had the ingredients on, but not the recipe.
And I will
Recipe,
send it to everyone.
okay, because the recipe is this page and these pages.
Oh, my word.
But after you see it done, it's not that tough, but it'll just remind you of it. I've now, because I became obsessed with bagels during the pandemic, I wanted a crunchy bagel that was chewy inside.
Sounds good.
I was not happy with the stuff the grocery store had, so I just made the decision I was going to try it, and so that's why I came to this point.
So did you have try a lot of different recipes?
I did. Over the years, I tried making the very first bagels I ever made. I don't know if you remember, Chris, but there was a bakery in Pawtucket, Rhode Island, and a Jewish bakery that on St. Patrick's Day made their bagels green. And after we moved away from Rhode Island, my mother wanted green bagels for St. Patrick's Day one year. And so I said, all right, I'll give it a try. So the very first bagel recipe I had, I tinted them green, the whole thing, but they weren't great. They were more, they were heavy, but it was the first time I'd done it. So I tried it a couple more times. And then I really started looking in earnest about, 10 months ago.
Okay.
So I've tried about 6 or 7 different recipes, and this is the best one. So I have since looked at other recipes like the King Arthur book that the King Arthur website actually has a new bagel recipe on it that has malted powder for an ingredient, but I'm not knowing how that would work out. I didn't have time to go ahead and make that recipe, but I'm thrilled with this one. This one
Well,
boxes.
yeah, if it's out, don't mess with it.
Yeah, it is. It's really, I think it's the best one. Well, it's the best one I've tried, and it tastes like when that place near Johnny's, Patty.
Yeah.
When it's called Maples.
Maples, yeah.
Yeah, it tastes like theirs.
Yeah, they're really good. Well, it's tough here too because we don't have a bagel shop nearby, a place to get bagels. I could go to Philadelphia, but that's a couple hours.
Yeah.
So the only thing I can get for bagels is I have to go to the grocery store.
Yeah.
Which I do not call a bagel, but whatever. And the Killer Bread bagels are really pretty good. That Killer Bread that is out now, but they only make everything or raisin.
Oh.
And my favorite bagel is sesame seed.
Me too.
Yeah. So
you should try one in Scotland.
Well,
I should. I'll be over. As soon as I get all shot up.
We will do some sesame bagels today, but I know that you can, from this recipe, you can do any of them, and it will be really easy to see how you get the stuff on the outside of the bagel. It's pretty simple.
Oh, that's good.
No trick.
Well, Marian, what I'll do is I will let people in if they come in.
Okay.
As they come in, but whenever you want to get started, you can. So that now, the one other thing I have to say is, was it 6 years ago? 6 years and a couple of days ago, this house she's in burnt to the ground.
Yep.
So it's so weird.
Yep.
So weird to look at this house because it was burnt to the ground.
But I made it, we put all the same cabinets in. We put the same fireplaces in, we put the same stuff. So that when I look out, of course, the furniture is different. Furniture is very different. But when I look out there, I chose things that sort of reminded me of what we had before, which apparently people take the opportunity to buy different stuff, not me. There were things I couldn't get that were the same. And there were things that I did want to change. But the kitchen, when I stand here and I look around, it's exactly the same as it was before the fire. So it doesn't seem like it even happened.
Yay, because that was pretty awful. Okay, so I will be quiet now, which I know you all will be impressed by.
I All right, so there's a couple things, I don't know that I'm gonna talk about equipment right now. Couple of things that I consider pretty essential. You don't have to have them. There are measurements on here for how many cups to use, but really the best thing to use for any kind of bread baking at all is a scale. If you walk to the British baking show at all, you notice they don't use measuring cups.
Oh, yeah, okay.
This recipe has scale measurements. When you're getting a scale, if you decide to go ahead and get one, you should get it so that it measures in milliliters, grams, and ounces, because you need all three. And when you're doing bread, you'll need all three. So we're going to start with that. Then another thing, this is a dough blade. I don't know if anybody has this. It's got a round circle like that. It's just basically for your grip. This edge is pretty sharp, and you use it for dividing dough. Measuring cups, rubber spatula, and an instant read thermometer. And the reason that I use this is because we don't want to kill our yeast. So I use an instant read thermometer just to make sure that it's not too hot. Other people that I know, they use the baby trick. They run the water on their wrist, and if they can't feel it, it's like feeding the baby formula. If you can't feel it, if it's not too hot and it doesn't feel cold, then it's a little bit cooler than is optimum. But that's a good way to do it, just so that you make sure that you don't kill your yeast. Another question that people ask a lot of times is this calls for active dry yeast. Some people have bought only instant yeast, and they're wondering if it's the same thing, if they can use instant yeast instead of active dry yeast. And the answer is yes, you can. Active dry yeast doesn't, the little critters that are in there, they probably have a 80%, what do you call it? They're 80% alive. Whereas with instant yeast, it's like 100% alive. It's a much smaller particle, and you can add instant yeast directly to flour. But with active dry yeast, you have to proof it first. You have to put it in warm water with a catalyst, and that is what causes the yeast to bloom. You want to make sure that the yeast isn't dead before you go putting all these ingredients into a bowl and then not having anything happen. So one of the things that I do is I keep my yeast in the freezer, because if you keep the yeast in the freezer, it will stay good for almost forever. It'll be there. You could be there a year later and the yeast will still be okay. It'll still bloom. So I guess what we're going to do is, does anybody have any questions? I talked about it. There's we use bread flour. It has a high gluten content. That's one of the reasons why it makes great bagels. You can make bagels with plain old all-purpose flour, but this is going to make a much better bagel than regular all-purpose flour. Any questions so far? No? Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to measure out the liquid for the warm water. Right. And it says how many grams? Milliliters. Okay. So I have to change my units to milliliters, and then I zero my scale. And then I need 530 milliliters. So I'm just going to pour this in until I get to about 250. And then I'm going to add some cool water, just till I get it to the right temperature. Because my water doesn't come out of my tap at the right temperature. Okay, so what you're looking for is you're looking for 115 degrees.
So then when you find out how many cups it is, you'll tell us, right?
Right, so it's, well, the thing is what I'm doing more, I'm doing it by milliliters. It winds up being just about 2¼ cups. And it
Okay.
says so right on the directions that it's.
Oh, okay, alrighty, okay. Because my scale doesn't have milliliters, it only has grams and pounds.
Okay. So that's now at 112 degrees, which is close enough. So it says to measure out, let's see, a half a cup. So I'm going to measure out, because it doesn't tell me how many milliliters that is. So I'm going to measure out, well, I'll leave a half a cup in this.
Chris, I think a milliliter and a gram are the same as long as it's water.
In water it is, because one's
water.
volume, right, one's weight.
Right, and I think that, obviously it's different for different things. It would be different for orange juice or things that are more dense, but I think in water, a milliliter and a gram are the same thing. But I'll look that up and let you know.
Okay. So this is a half a cup of water, and this is 2 tablespoons of barley malt. So what we're going to do is we're going to add the barley malt to the water. And then we're going to add the yeast. So it says to put in 1¼ ounce packet. It's about 2¼ teaspoons. And it would be, if you're using a package of yeast from the store, that's about how much it is. All right. So we're going to mix this together. And we're going to let it proof for about 5 minutes. And you'll see, right now you can actually kind of see the yeast granules in there. But when we're finished, we'll know the yeast is alive if it has foam on the top in just a little bit. Okay. Now, what we're going to do next is we're going to weigh out the flour. This is a very simple recipe. It's just a couple of ingredients. So I'm going to put this on grams. I'm going to put my bowl on, and I'm going to zero it. Okay, so the recipe calls for 885 grams of bread flour. So I'm really kind of particular about making sure my measurements are pretty close because, baking is science. So it's, you want it to have a good chance of being right. So then it talks about salt. Now, one of the things that it mentions in here is the kind of salt you use. Very fine salt, you'll get more salt in a measuring spoon than you will if you use Morton salt, which is a kosher salt. And if you use diamond crystal salt, it's even coarser still. So it's best to weigh the salt. And for this, we're going to need 17 grams of salt.
Now, is that the coarse kosher salt or the fine? That's
It's the
coarse.
diamond crystal. It's really coarse.
Okay, I got the Morton.
Yeah, that you use a little bit less of Morton than you do of diamond crystal, or if it calls for Morton.
Yeah, because I weighed it and it was the tablespoon was exactly 17 grams.
Was okay. That's good to know. All right, so now,
But it is very coarse.
yeah.
So you use it as it is. You don't have to make it any finer.
This, now we're ready because our, if you notice, see, you've all obviously, how many people have actually made bread? Have you all made bread? Okay, so you all
Very
know
long time ago.
how to do this. Notice the yeast is active because it's got that thing of foam on the top. Okay, so I'm going to move over to my mixer. This recipe says to make a well in the middle and then to do this all by hand, but I use my mixer because my mixer will actually do this. But at this point, if you don't have I have a stand mixer that's got a really, really strong motor, and I can get away with doing this on the mixer. So I do. But at this point in the recipe, it tells you to do it by hand. And what it does is it does make a very heavy dough. And so if you have a stand mixer that you love and you're not sure whether or not the motor can take it, don't try to do it on your stand mixer. Excuse me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this over there and take it away. Okay. I don't know if everybody can see this. I'm just going to turn the mixer on. So I just give it a stir a minute before I put the wet ingredients in. I start off with the paddle on my mixer, and then I move to doing it with the dough hook.
Marian, does it tell you why you can't just put all the yeast stuff in all the water, seeing as you're using all the water anyway?
No, it doesn't. But I think it's because I actually have no idea. It's a good question. I really have no idea. It doesn't seem like it should make a difference. And some recipes do call for you to put it in all the water. So it has to make sure that it will bloom. But your way would make a lot less dirty dishes.
Maybe it's because there needs to be a certain barley, whatever ratio to yeast.
Perhaps. All right, I'm going to take this off the mixer so I can show you how ragged the dough looks right now. See, you can see it. See, it's pretty ragged.
Yeah.
Okay, so this, if you were going to take it out now and knead it, you'd be kneading it for 15, 20 minutes to get it to where it needs to go. It's a very, very, like I say, it's a very, very stiff dough. It's a real workout for your arms. But anyway, I use the dough hook because I'm lazy. So we're going to let the dough mix up for a while and let it knead away. With the machine, it takes about 8 minutes for it to get to the point where it needs to be. So we're just gonna. I'll just show you what the next step would be. Is you're going to need a large bowl. And a lot of recipes call for you to grease the bowl and then to grease the dough. This one does not, and I tried greasing it once and it did seem to make it different. So I just now go by the directions. Good, follow directions. What you're also going to need after you get the dough to rise is once you're dividing the dough out into portions, you're going to use the scale. I use the scale to make sure the portions are the same. This recipe calls for making 12 or 13 bagels, and it will give you the measurement. It will say it's about 4 ounces if you want to make 12. I make 10. We like a really big bagel, something that you can put a burger on. So I usually divide it in 10. And so if you want to make 10 bagels out of this, the proportion that you need to divide them into is 5 ounces. Okay. Any questions so far? I mean, the recipe is really pretty simple. There's not a lot of complicated stuff in it. And if you baked bread before, it's really, really very easy.
How long did you say you put it in with the dough hook?
I usually put it in like for 8 minutes, about 8 minutes. I'm gonna go put these in the sink.
Have you ever done it not as long? Do you know what happened? I'm just thinking I'm gonna have to do mine by hand. So
Yeah.
if I don't need it enough, am I gonna know? How am I gonna tell?
Well, the thing is that it's going to make a difference when you're shaping the dough and when you're shaping it into bagels, because you need to have that really, really smooth consistency. And if you don't knead it long enough, there's a thing, if you watch cooking shows, they call it the window pane test. You're developing, while you're kneading it, you're developing the gluten in the bread. And that's the thing that gives it a nice rise when you cut it. When you cut bread, you see it's all nice little holes in it. That's called the crumb. It gives it a nice crumb. If you don't knead it long enough, you're not going to get a nice crumb. So kneading is really important. It's an important part of it. So, but, you know, get a kneading buddy and make them take turns. Just, you know, but I'll show you what it looks like afterward. You saw how ragged it looked when we first started out. It's going to be a nice smooth dough once this thing finishes kneading.
Another question I have is when I knead dough usually, because I do not do anything exact, I'm terrible. I use flour on my hands. I should not do that.
Well,
That's
this one, you really are not going to need it because it's not sticky at all. It's a really heavy dough. It's not going to, once you get it all mixed up really well, it's not going to be a lot of sticky on your hands. You don't want to add a lot of flour to this. It's already a heavy dough. Okay. For penne doughs, like Italian bread that you want a nice open crumb to, they're usually very, very sticky. That's when I first started making a lot of those Italian breads. That's one of the reasons I got this big stand mixer, is because what you put just the exact amount of flour that they ask for. You don't have to put any on the counter at all. You let it knead for as long as you want. And when you take it out, it is a little sticky, but it barely sticks to your hands because it's developed the gluten. That's the trick, is make sure you have the gluten developed well enough, and then you don't wind up with a sticky mess. So
now, if you were going to make, I'm sorry, if you were going to make these, say, raisin bagels, would you be putting the raisins in now?
Well, one of the things that happens with dough is that you can put it in now. It would probably be easier to put it in now. I've never made raisin bagels, but I will tell you what the experience is like with other yeast breads that I do put fruit and stuff in, is that anything that you put fruit in is going to affect how long it rises. Anything with sugar in it, it's going to take longer to rise. So if you want to put it in at this point, it's probably, you're going to get a much more even blend. Or if you put it in while you're kneading it, that's another way you can do it. You can put them out on the counter, you know, roll it, fold it in, and roll it again, fold it in, fold it in, fold it in, so that when you throw it into the bowl, it's already got the raisins through it. I'm trying to think. I've never done that. I don't particularly care for raisin bagels, and Patrick absolutely hates them. So, with his Nobody here to eat a bagel.
Put the raisins in your scones. Even
yeah,
bagels.
yeah, raisins go in the scones, right. We have to be very purist about our bagels. All right, so it needs a little bit more time.
Did you put the baking soda in?
No, the baking soda doesn't go in the bagel. The baking soda goes in the water you boil it in.
Oh, okay.
Let me show you this while we're waiting for that to finish. This is the big cauldron that I make my bagels in. And before I everybody called in, I had already put in the water and a quarter of a cup of barley malt and a teaspoon of baking soda. And it's gonna look something like that. See, it kind of looks like tea. Can everybody see it?
Yeah.
It's got the color of tea. And what that barley malt is gonna do is it's gonna make the outside of that bagel nice and crunchy.
So it's a quarter a cup of in the water. And
Right.
how much did you put when you did the yeast?
Two tablespoons.
Tablespoons.
You'll see that on the recipe. It's pretty
Yeah,
good.
but we don't have the recipe, right?
Yeah, you don't have the recipe, I'm sorry. We should have thought of that and sent it to you beforehand.
Sorry, I'll send that. Might be able to put it in the chat. Let me see if I can put it in the chat while she's kneading.
So the next thing we're gonna do while this is I made dough. I made actually 2 batches of dough before this. Now this is the half batch, and what I have over here for bagels is a half batch. What I'm gonna do is show you how to form them into bagels. And this is why I use my scale, because it makes it. And this one I need ounces for. Okay. So like I say, I make 10 bagels out of this recipe. So I'm going to cut this piece of dough into 5 pieces because it's only a half recipe.
So is that already risen?
It's already risen. I
How long
made
did
it
it
about
rise?
an hour and a half to 2 hours ago, and it's already risen. So it's ready to go. Let me put it in there. Okay, see the dough is much smoother now than it was when we started. It's nice and smooth. Can everybody see that? It's not ragged the way it was before. But it is a very, very heavy dough. And when we first start kneading it, it's going to be, it's just a real workout for your arms. Paul Hollywood would say, roll it away and then bring it back, roll it away and bring it back. Paul Hollywood seems to know what he's talking about. But anyway, see how it's nice, smooth dough? It's come together, and what we're going to do with it then is we're going to put a little bit of flour on the bottom. Like that. We're going to drop it in the bowl. Put a little bit of flour on the top. And then we're going to cover it with a damp cloth.
I can't copy it and put it in the chat, so I'll send it to you.
And you know, it's as things go, one of the things that you really have to do is you have to kind of keep an eye on it, make sure that it doesn't overbloom. So one of the things that you wind up happening is that if you allow it to proof too long, that means to rise too long, then you'll get your bagels cooked. After they come out of the water bath, they'll look like they shrunk, they look flat. And that's because you've allowed them to proof for too long. So keep an eye on it. When it looks like double the volume, make them then. You'll actually, because the way that the temperature in your room affects how long it takes for something to rise. It's, did you have the water at 115 degrees or was it cooler? All that's going to affect how long it takes this dough to rise. So once you get it in there, make sure you keep an eye on it. For me, for this bowl, this one right here, it's a pretty good sized bowl. You can see where the bread is in there. When the dough just starts to make a bump in the cloth at the top, I know it's ready to go. But of course, your bowls are different from mine. So it's just going to have to be trial and error. If I were you, I'd start by trying to make half a recipe just to see how they come out. The recipe divides in half very, very well. There isn't a problem with the proportions, changing the proportions. So now I'm going to cut this into 5-ounce pieces. So I'll start like this. All right, that's 4.8. So I'm going to put a little bit more on there. That's too much. Okay, 5.0. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to roll it around in my hands. Now I'm going to put it down on the counter. I don't know if you can see this. Put it on the counter and I'm going to do this to it. We flip it over and do it again. And I'm going to keep doing it until it's a nice, smooth ball of dough. It helps during this stage not to put any flour on the top, on the countertop, because it will make it harder to have enough friction. So I'll do it again. So what I'm doing is I'm making sure that each of these is exactly the same size, because it helps, the uniform size helps to make sure that when you're cooking them, that that they all cook at the same time, that they're all done. So this is the part that takes place after the dough rises for the first time. You kind of punch it down, but I will tell you, after you wind up doing this to it, most of the punch down process is already taken care of. See a nice smooth round ball?
Hey, David and Linda, if you have questions, I unmuted everybody at the beginning, but you can just unmute and ask your questions if you want.
See, all of them will come out nice.
No, thank you. We're following.
Yeah.
And don't worry about, we know how to convert American quantities to metric or UK ones, so we've done this before. Getting things into 5-ounce balls might be a much more difficult exercise.
Actually, it's not bad. Once you get the hang of it, you just don't want it to be anything on the thing that would on the counter that would make it slick. So don't flour the counter at all. See,
Right.
not as tough as it looks. Nice round ball.
With you there.
See, that would be David's bit.
Okay.
Oh my God, the precision is killing me. You have a little left over, so you're not going to use it.
I'm not going to use.
Wow.
Maybe you could make Belarus wedding bread from it.
Yeah, right.
Okay, nice round ball. Okay, now comes this is the fun part. All right, parchment lined baking sheet works really well for this. So you're gonna take your two and you're gonna push them through the middle of the bagel like that. Okay? Get a hole in the bagel and you're gonna
Yeah.
pull it out like this.
Don't you remember me doing that?
No.
Right. So you've got a really big hole like that. Wait till you see how quick it closes up. So then when I get to this part, I squeeze it just to get all the extra bubbles, if there are any extra bubbles. And I'll put it down on the cookie sheet.
Yeah.
So you just keep repeating that with all of the balls that you have.
Oh, I don't, in my mind, I was picturing that you rolled it into like a tube and then wrapped it around together. This makes much more sense.
Yeah, it's that, well, some people do that because it's a very traditional way to make a bagel. They'll, do out a snake and they'll make sure that the two ends are thinner.
Well, yeah, some of them you can actually see where it was
Yeah,
joined.
and then join it together. But this is the way that I do it because it's easier. I've tried doing it because, of course, that's the purest way. But it's very difficult to get that seam to stick together.
Yeah, no, this is great. That's why it's so good to watch somebody do it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Don't underestimate how cack-handed we are, especially me.
I'm just going to turn on the fire underneath the pot because we have to bring it to a boil. And one of the things that's going to happen when you put the barley malt in is you want to make sure that whenever you drop the bagels in, that the water is boiling. It's at a good simmer. You don't want to put it in there when it's not hot enough to do what it has to do. So once you take the first 3 bagels out, you're going to wait before you put the next 2 in, or 3, or however many you're making. I also do this in 2 batches too, because I don't like to put all the bagels in the oven at once because it seems to come out better if I bake them in 2 batches. They don't take very long to cook anyway, like 15 to 20 minutes tops after you boil them and you stick them in the oven. They don't take very long. Last one. Okay, see how big I made that hole? I'll show you what they look like on the pan. They've already closed up. If you can see that. See, they're already closing up. All right, so at this point, what you do is you cover them with plastic wrap. And you put them in the refrigerator. And you can keep them in the refrigerator. I read someplace, this recipe calls for you to do it overnight. But I have read in other places where you can actually just leave them in there for up to 2 days. And the amount of time that you leave them in there, it makes the flavor more intense, from what I understand. I'm probably have to try that myself at some point.
I would never, ever attempt this if you hadn't shown me first how to do it.
Oh, really? Yeah, it's not hard, is it? It's really pretty easy.
I would have been intimidated by those 3 pages of.
Okay, so I'm gonna put these in the fridge, all right?
You're just like Martha Stewart. You have some already done, right? That you're gonna. Oh, look at you! How professional!
So here's the
And
ones
Look
that
at
are
that. Wow.
And we would call this a show called Blue Peter. They did that sort of thing as well.
Yeah. You must make a massive cheeseburger if that you put a burger on those bagels.
we want massive cheeseburgers. We put a lot of stuff on them. Okay.
How,
All right.
that was overnight, Marian? You did those overnight?
This was overnight. I put them in there probably, I made these about 4 o'clock in the afternoon yesterday. And so they've been in there since then. All right, this would be the time that whatever you want for toppings, like sesame seeds, or if you want to do an everything bagel, you would just shake the stuff into a plate. You know, just cover the bottom of the plate like that. Okay.
That's the good ice cream that you have your sesames in that jar.
No, it's gelato. I
Oh,
use these jars for everything. This one is key lime pie, which they no longer make anymore. It's Patrick's favorite.
Thank you, Ryan.
All right. So one of the good things is one of the, this is called a spider. It's
Ooh.
used for Asian food, I guess, most of the time. It's great to take bagels out of a pot of boiling water. And they're very reasonably priced. They're like maybe $11 for this, and it's big. I think this is the 8-inch one. But it works great. All right, I'll also show you over here what I have, my setup. I have a cookie
Got one?
it's you know, a cooling rack for cookie with a dishcloth underneath of it, because after I put the bagels into the water, I'm going to be putting them on here after they're done. Now, a lot of times it says, I will get Patrick to come over and help me while I'm putting the bagels in so that you can see. But a lot of times, people will say, a couple of bagel recipes I tried, you know, you put them in 2 minutes on each side. That winds up being too long. So this recipe calls for a minute on each side. And one of the things that I have seen is it calls for 40 seconds on each side. So it doesn't matter. The boiling is the thing that makes the crust really crunchy. And that barley water that's in it helps to give it that. It'll have a nice sheen. It has all those little blistery looking things on it. It looks just like they're great. They're good bagels. So let me see. It hasn't come to a boil yet. But what you'll see is, because of the barley that's in it, there'll be a foam. Sometimes it's more than others, but what you do before you start the bagels is you skim the foam off the top and you just toss it. So I'm going to get a bowl for that.
Yeah, this is fun. Very interesting. It was a first go the only time I've done it. And nailed it.
have you ever tried to make them without refrigerating them overnight?
No, I've made bagels before without refrigerating them overnight. And the basic ingredients in these bagels are almost exactly the same. This one called for malt syrup, which I think is a huge difference. And it calls for putting malt in the water and baking soda. And a lot of the other ones that I saw did not call for that. It might have been because it's not all that easy to find barley malt syrup. You know, I got it at Whole Foods, but they don't sell it in the regular grocery store. I couldn't find it in the grocery stores near me. But it does, as far as I can tell, the difference between them is flavor. These certainly had a lot more flavor. And that's been borne out by all of the things that I read about what happens if something goes wrong with your food. Or, you know, the difference between the recipes is that the ones that wind up being in the refrigerator are the ones that everybody gives 5 stars to. You know, you look at all of, this is how I love this recipe, and they all get great reviews. I noticed just from the difference in the taste that this is a much nicer recipe than the other ones.
I like things you can do like a day ahead anyway, and then, you know, then you can get ahead of it. And then if you've got someone coming over, you just you can cook them right at the last minute.
Yeah, and the thing about this is, this part of it is really pretty easy, because I'm waiting now for the foam to come off of this. But you'll see, once I get these in the water, they almost come right out of the water right away. They go back on the same cookie sheet and I put them in the oven. 15 minutes later, they're done. So it's really, it's such an easy thing. You can invite people over and make them bagels while they watch you. You know, it's,
Yeah.
Not in Britain, you can.
Also, if you look at other bagel recipes, you'll see some people tell you to get some egg white and do an egg wash on them after you put them out, take them out of the water so that you can get the stuff to stick to them, like the sesame seeds or anything else, but they'll stick to them. Just that wet bagel will make them stick right away. And the starch in the flour will be enough glue to keep them stuck on there through the whole baking process.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. Let me see. Pat, could you bring this over here? I now call on my assistant.
Are you making him a burger to go on his bagel when this is all done?
I could.
I think he's earning it.
He's earning it. Okay. All right, come closer. All right, see the foam that's on the top?
Yep.
It's forming on the top and around the sides. Once this thing really gets boiling, the foam, there's going to be a lot more foam. So all you do, I'm going to wait until it gets it on there, and then I'm going to skim it off. Patrick, you should probably stand over on that side. Bagels in the water. Right.
Now, if you had covered that to make it boil, would it matter?
Yeah, no, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
I should have done that. But
I didn't know if it needed to evaporate as well as.
yeah, no.
It's coming soon for all that.
Right, so it's getting a lot more foam on it now. And once it really starts to come to a boil, it'll get even more.
Have you done it leaving the foam on before?
No, they said to take it off. I do what I'm told about this anyway. There are other things which I'm not so.
So about, do you know about how much water you've got in there?
No, I don't. It's probably as far as inches. It's probably 4 inches deep.
So they float, right?
They
So,
do float. Yeah.
so as long as you've got, you know, twice, 2 to 3 times the thickness of the bagel, you're probably good.
Right.
I mean, the phone certainly does.
Oh, wow. You could be doing this all night, it looks like.
No, eventually it'll calm down.
You know what it tastes like? Have you tried it?
No. I'm chicken when it comes to this stuff. I've tasted the barley malt syrup.
Oh, I tasted that. That's pretty good. It tastes
was.
like weak molasses.
Yeah.
Ah, right. Now you're talking. Gets you very drunk, that does.
Chris, I just forwarded it to you and it works. So I'm going to forward to you now, David and Linda.
Oh,
Of
good.
course.
It's going to be forwarded to you in Facebook because you have to download it. And when I tried to download it and copy it, it wouldn't let me. So I guess that's the New York Times protecting itself.
So it'll go back to the invitation? It'll be in there somewhere?
No, it's in your Facebook Messenger.
Oh, Messenger. Oh, good. That's good.
Oops, wrong person. I just sent it to the wrong David Cobb. Oops.
Well, that's how we met.
How many
wasn't
David
it?
Cobs do you know?
You know too, huh?
Yeah, when I ran for vice president, my running mate's name was David Cobb.
Oh, he's gonna wonder what the heck you're sending him.
Right, right. Luckily I talked to him about 2 weeks ago, so he won't think I'm totally out of the blue, but
And he's a 60-something and he's a lawyer as well.
yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
curious coincidence.
You're both wonderful men, so that's pretty nice.
Oh,
So
It goes with the
where we
name.
are now, we're getting to the point where it's not gonna foam up any more than it is
This
right now.
looks like the hardest part of this recipe.
It does take patience.
sorry.
I'm really glad I watched this because, just reading the directions, you wouldn't get it.
Okay.
I know I'm gonna need a very big bowl to put that foam in.
Yeah, bowl.
Got it, Pat. Thank you.
This is the most foam I've ever seen. One time it was barely 2 scoops. I have no idea why it's doing this. Okay. All right, so that's a good amount of foam to leave on there. I'll show you one other trick that this thing advises that you do before you put your bagels in, but I know that they're approved. You can take your bagel, and if it's proofed enough, you can put it in the water bath and it will float. I don't know what's going to happen with this one. See, it's floating.
Mhm.
That means that it's ready to go in the water.
Okay.
So you put it in water before you put it in the boiling water?
Just to see if it's proofed. You don't have to do it to all of them.
I see.
Make sure that the bagel is proofed. Okay. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over and I'm going to take this one out of here and I'm going to drop it in here. And I have more foam. Okay, so I'm going to count 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi, 5 Mississippi, 6 Mississippi, 7 Mississippi. Just give it like 40 seconds on each side. And then flipping it over sometimes isn't as easy. Okay, so then you flip it over and you count again. I'm going to show you how to do the sesame thing with this first one. Because I have my little plate with sesame seeds on it.
Okay.
This is hotter than hell. It's hard to flip it over. You can see that the sesame seeds they'll stay on now on the top and bottom. All right, I'm going to put some more of these in the water. After you do that, after you put this on and get the sesame seeds on, then you put it onto a rack and let it dry.
Every time I see something like this, I have so much respect for bakeries. You know, you walk in and there are 400 bagels behind the guy,
Oh, yeah.
right?
It has been up since 2 o'clock in the morning making those.
Right. Does it rise at all while it's in there?
Yeah, it does. In fact, I got a little bubble on the edge of one. Oh, I just popped it. Okay. It'll rise up with it. Yeah, they grow. They've grown. That's bigger than it was when I put it in. The sesame one.
Huh.
It's gotten substantial. I will say one thing though. These bagels were in the refrigerator a little longer than I usually put them in for. I usually do this right before I go to bed at night. And then when I get up in the morning, I make them. So these were in the overnight for probably another 5 hours more than I usually do it. I'm having a little bit of a problem getting them off the paper. So that might be something that you want to keep in mind.
I wonder if you could put it on a silk pat if they'd,
Yeah, probably. I
I
think
wonder
so.
if they wouldn't stick as much.
Yeah, probably not. You're probably right.
I can't remember to put the steel cut oats in water before I go to bed. I can't imagine all of the commitment for this whole preparation and then go to bed.
What you need, Patty, is a rice cooker. Mine will make steel cutouts, and you set it on a timer, and it does it all by itself.
Oh, I never soak my steel cut. Oh,
No?
no, I just cook them in the morning.
Huh.
I do. I get Bob's. I don't know what kind you get.
I get Bob's. I use Bob's.
And how long do you cook them?
20 minutes,
Yeah, 20.
but maybe you can cook them quicker if you've soaked them, right?
Yeah, I think that just a couple of minutes is all it takes.
Yeah.
Unless you don't remember to soak them, which is my problem.
See, these have gotten huge. I think they probably, the extra 5 hours in the fridge probably, these might wind up coming out a little flat, which would mean that they're overproof, which would give us our answer about if this is too long to put them in for. And they're sticking to my fingers, which they never do.
So what are we doing next month, Marian?
I don't know. Nothing. I'm gonna be, I have next month, I have to go have reversal surgery.
What? Oh, okay. Yeah, Jen told me about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's
So
gonna,
no cooking lesson next month.
no cooking lesson.
Janice said she wanted you to make the lamb pie or whatever.
Curry pie.
Yeah.
Curry pie is great. It's got,
Well, no, you're gonna be having surgery, but the rest of us aren't, Marian, so.
well, you do the cooking lesson next time, Patty. It's up to you. You have to carry the torch.
All right, we're having steel cut oats next month.
We've got some great haggis recipes.
Haggis. I was watching Star Trek the other night and Scotty said, "Oh, the haggis is in the fire now."
Yeah.
As we say all the time.
Yeah, I've never had haggis. I've heard of it, but never.
You damn nearly got it a couple of years. You damn nearly got it a couple of years ago, but couldn't find any small enough.
Wasn't this season they'd all been shot?
Exactly.
Oh my goodness, they're not even gonna fit on there, Marian. That's so big.
Well,
Now, did you change the paper? Is it the same paper?
The same paper.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna do your suggestion to use a Silpat. I think these overproved but now that I'm looking at them, see how they're kind of flat? They're not usually
Yeah.
like that. So I don't know if, I would suggest maybe not going by that suggestion. And don't leave them in for 2 days.
So you
Yeah.
preheated the oven?
I did, 450. And I'm gonna check them in 15 minutes.
Lunchtime on day 2.
All right, that's good. Thank you, Patrick. All right, so I think, having seen how they came out this time, they flattened down a lot. I think that's what they're talking about, overproofed. So to make them, I would suggest that you do what I've always done when I've made them before, is I make the dough, form them all, put them in the refrigerator just before I go to bed. And then the next day, they're proved enough. I mean, I floated them in the bowl for you guys, but I only did that the first time. If it floats, they're proved enough, but it just, they were harder to get off the paper. They also flattened when I stuck them in the water bath, and then that's never happened before. So we'll go ahead and just say, all right, just overnight, really overnight, like maybe 8 hours, that's it.
Most dinners are working flat out.
Oh, so 8 hours, so like 11 to 7.
All right. I stay up late and I get up early, so that's not a problem for me.
I just checked and the recipe is there, Patty, so it worked.
Okay, good.
I'd show you my pantry, but I'm very embarrassed. It's really bad. I had Patrick build me this little trolley thing just to put the flour on. That's an addiction.
So when you made that half batch, you only made a half a batch. You didn't make a whole batch and then have them all ready.
I only made a half a batch. So tonight I'll form the ones that I made for the full batch today. They freeze pretty well too. So if you want to make some and you know you can't eat all of them yourself, you can stick them in the freezer and they keep really well.
After they're cooked?
After they're cooked, yeah.
I wonder what would happen if you froze, if you didn't want to overproof them, if you froze the unbaked ones.
Yeah,
Unboiled.
it might
I
work.
wonder what would happen.
I don't know. It's a good for experiment.
Yeah.
You mean when you form them, you stick them in then?
Yeah.
Yeah. I might try that. I might try that with some of these. 'Cause
That's,
like,
you can try it with just one so you don't ruin a whole
yeah,
bunch.
well, that's true too. That would be a smart thing to do. Yeah. And then I wonder, we'll have to experiment about how long you leave them after you take them out, to rise, because they'd be coming up from frozen.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, it takes a while. That's going to take a long time. Yeah.
I freeze bread dough all the time, but I did it a couple of weeks ago and I took it out recently and it didn't rise again.
Oh, it didn't. Okay. Well, I've had pretty good luck putting dough in the fridge after the first rise. In the freezer. You put it in the freezer after it, like this is for whole wheat bread or pizza dough. You let it rise once, you punch it down, you stick it in the freezer, put it in a plastic bag and just shove it in the freezer. That you take it out, you put it in the bowl and it rises again. I've had no problem with that. So since the bagels will all have risen once, it probably would work with the formed bagel because it's gone through one rise. I just don't think there's probably enough yeast to get it going for a first rise. So, but after they're all formed, I would think that would work. As far as other things, baking stuff, I know you won't be able to bake them from You'll have to let them rise. Like with scones, we'll make a whole bunch of scones and stick them in the freezer raw, and then take them out and put them in the oven at exactly the same temperature you do it if they were not frozen, and they cook in exactly the same amount of time.
Really? Put them in frozen?
Yep, from frozen, exactly the same amount of time. It's very strange. But there you have it. It has something to do with kitchen chemistry that I know nothing about. What do I do with my phone? Okay. I hope this isn't disappointing, you know, that extra time in the freezer, that it didn't wreck them. But then I'll know better with this big batch. I won't do that.
Now, how long did you say you're gonna bake them?
I'm going to bake them 15 minutes, and then I'm going to look at them
Yeah.
and see if they look like they're brown enough, and then I'll take them out. If they're not, then what I do is I let them go for another 3 to 5 minutes, but I start with 15. And those big, you know how Patty, I said I cut them into 5-ounce ones? They don't get that big if you don't let them prove that long overnight in the fridge. They don't get that. This is like monster bagels because they were in there for a long time. Yeah, because they were probably in there for 24 hours anyway, because I did them yesterday afternoon and stuck them in there. So that's probably what it is. They just.
What temperature do you have the oven at?
I'm sorry?
What temperature?
450 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah, okay, thanks. So you maybe told me that it went out the other year, sorry. But yeah, that's fine.
How time we got left? The thing you really ought to make is the thing I made the other night. That thing was awesome. I put a picture of it up. It was like a stuffed pizza. It looks like a dome.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that thing was delicious. It was so good.
Was it kind of like a calzone? I mean, was it bready or was it?
No,
it looked like a pie.
Yeah, it was. And what it was is I tried to take a picture of it from the side so you could see how much of a dome it was. But what you did is you made this pizza crust, and then you put it out like a 15-inch circle I put it on a pizza peel with some, what do you call it? Paper on the top.
Parchment paper.
Yeah, very good. And then you take what you've done before while the dough is rising is you take onions and red pepper, garlic, and you saute it in olive oil. Then you throw in like 3 or 4 cups of cubed up aubergine, eggplant, and then then there's this, you know, other things in there. There's tomatoes. You take a couple of Roma tomatoes and you seed and core them, and you chop those up and you cook those too. What is that? That's very bright, that thing. Okay. Then you after you've cooked it for a while, it's just salt and pepper. Then when you put the first thing out, you cover that with, I put different kinds of cheese. I put mozzarella, then I put provolone, then I put basil, what's the stuff?
Pesto?
Basil pesto all over the cheese. And then you put all of the stuff on. And I had to keep piling it, and it kept making a higher and higher dome. And then you press out the next pizza crust, and you wet it around the edge. You leave an edge about that wide. You wet it, you put the next pizza crust over, you've just folded all. You cut 3 holes on the top, shove it in the oven. It was easy. Simple.
Did you cook it in a pan? Did you cook it in a skillet or something?
No, I just cooked, the filling I had to cook in a skillet, but when I put it,
when you put it in the oven.
nope, I just put the pizza peel in. I have a big
Stone?
pizza stone in it. It covers almost the entire bottom shelf in my oven, except for an inch around the edge. You have to leave an inch. So that I've got this big surface to cook on. I just put it in there and you know, with the peel, so what is that, kinetic energy? Just
So
took
it didn't flatten down.
Nope. But Patty, there's so much stuff stuffed inside of it. So, and the pizza dough goes over the top of all these vegetables.
Yeah, and it was all cooked already. Where like when you make an apple pie,
Yeah.
but it
Wait.
shrinks because it's cooked. The apples aren't cooked until you're actually baking it.
Right. So it was, on the top, after you put all the filling in there, you put feta cheese on it and then some more provolone, and then you put the top crust on it. So it's, but it was very tasty. It was really, really good. That pesto was perfect amount of seasoning for it, other than the salt and pepper and the vegetable mix. So, but I'm sure, Patty, what you ought to do is do macaroni and cheese next time.
I make Julia Child's macaroni and cheese now. It's the best macaroni and cheese I've ever had, and it's the easiest thing in the world.
Okay.
It's got 4 ingredients.
You have April. April is yours.
I can give you the macaroni and cheese right now. It's cream, cheese, mustard, pepper, pasta.
Really?
That's
You don't
it.
Yeah. Huh.
No
What kind-
roux, no.
Oh, I don't make a roux. I put, I don't use cream. I use milk.
Yeah, no use cream.
You use cream. I bet it tastes good. But
Cream?
your arteries, how are your
Yes,
arteries?
yeah, the cream definitely tastes better, but it's not necessarily the best thing for you. But
Yeah.
You know what I'm making tonight? Is I'm
What?
making half cauliflower and half macaroni and cheese.
Oh, that's good.
So what happens that really screws up the macaroni and cheese when you use cauliflower is that the cauliflower sheds water.
Right.
yeah,
So-
it's watery.
So
Yeah.
roast it first.
I roast it first. I break the cauliflower up, rinse it off, whatever, put it in the oven, roast it so it dehydrates
Yeah.
in the thing. Then you put an equal amount of pasta in there, cream, the cheese, the salt, the pepper, the mustard.
Sounds pretty good.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And
I-
it's still macaroni and cheesy. That whole just cauliflower and cheese.
Yeah, it does good. I love cauliflower cheese though. I love it.
I do
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
It's now another way you can do it is you can cook the cauliflower in the milk, and that becomes your sauce with the cheese.
Oh, that's a good idea.
That's a
I-
great
what-
idea.
You just
That's
cook
a great idea.
and then put it under the grill and with all the cheese on top so it melts. It's lovely.
Sounds delicious.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yes, food is my downfall.
No.
So, it gives such pleasure when we've all been
Does.
oh yeah.
It does. Yeah, I try making things. One of my favorite cookbooks is a Cooking Light whole grain. It's got great, everything I've made from there has just been wonderful. And
Uh-huh.
it has, yeah, it's a good, really good recipe book. So I've started putting, swapping out half of the flour when I make like a pie crust. I shift out to whole wheat pastry flour, half of
Yeah.
it. And it really, you can't really tell the difference, but it increases the amount of fiber that you have in it.
Yeah.
It comes out really good. It has a nuttier flavor than just regular all-purpose flour. And then I make, talk about Bob's steel cut oats. I made jambalaya. It calls for making jambalaya. So you put all the ingredients in there, but instead of using rice, you use steel cut oats.
Right.
Man, it's delicious. It's really, really good.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's got, all the fiber, how good oatmeal is for you. And rice is not that great for you, but so it's
Yeah.
so good.
Yeah.
You know that watched pot never boils?
Yeah.
Does it ever?
I know.
We've got 2 minutes left, guys.
I think the steel cut oats will counteract the cream.
Maybe.
I'm going to try the idea of cooking the cauliflower in the milk tonight.
Yeah, good idea.
I really
Yeah.
love that idea.
Oh, it's good. I came from there's a cook in the UK, Jamie Oliver, who is really good, and he started a series of programs during lockdown, which was to encourage you to cook at home. And what he did was all the ingredients, because it was difficult for people to shop, he gave lots of alternatives. If you didn't have X, you could use Y and Z instead. And it was about using what you had in the cupboards, and it was good. And that was where one of his recipes was the cauliflower mac and cheese, and that was where he said just cook it in the milk, and then the whole flavor goes through. Then add the cheese, and it builds from there.
That's a great idea.
Lovely. It's really good.
Yeah.
I'll look at the recipe and I'll put it on. I'll send it.
Yes,
over.
send it to Patty.
Oh.
And we'll all
Yeah,
steal it from her.
Will do.
Okay.
I have not eaten a meal outside my house since March 6th of 2020.
July, I think, last year.
Yes.
Yeah, we haven't. Mine. Well, I went to Ireland last year. I left on March 6th, and March 4th. I left on March 4th, and I had to come back early because I saw on the news that Donald Trump was going to close down the airport. So
Yes.
I switched my flight and came home early. But so my last time eating in a restaurant was over there.
Oh, well, that's a pretty, I remember mine, so I can only imagine how memorable yours was.
Yeah.
I had
It was
down in California and I came home and
We're going to give them another 2 minutes.
oh, show us what they look like that they're not good enough.
Okay.
just for Marian's doing that. You'll notice that someone has shown the most rapt attention.
Oh,
As long as you don't vomit and you see how dirty my oven is. Okay, see, that side is okay. Those are the ones that are in the back. So I turned this sheet around so that I could get the ones that had been in the front a better color. Well, it'll be about 2 minutes.
and you don't put anything on them when they come out?
Nope. Nope. I put, when they come out, I put cream cheese on them and stick them in the mouth.
Except for all the work, they seem pretty easy.
They're easy. Yeah, they're really easy. I mean, it's a very simple thing. And when I think of all the recipes that I went through and I thought, gee, this one's not bad. And then of course I thought it's not bad, but it's not great. It doesn't taste exactly right. So I just kept looking until I found this one, the New York Times. I figured you can't go wrong with the New York Times. They have a great English muffin recipe on the New York Times too.
Yep.
If you've ever made English muffins, they're really good. You have all the nooks and crannies in them and everything.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, those are fun because you make them in a ring. Well, you don't have to have the ring. You cut them out. Some people put the ring on the stove, but
Yes.
I just take it out and put it on a frying pan, and the whole thing on a frying pan.
So you don't bake them, right? They cook them in a pan.
Yeah, they cook on the frying pan.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
Yeah.
Is it special flour?
Nope.
No.
So how does it get that graininess?
Oh, it's cornmeal.
Okay.
So you put cornmeal on the frying pan. You put the muffin on top of it, and then it just,
Okay.
You mean instead of oil?
Yep. No. Well, I think you put a little bit of oil. It's been about 6 months since I made them, so I think you might take like a paper towel with olive oil on it and swirl it on the pan. You're not putting a whole bunch of olive oil on. And then use the light olive oil, the one that doesn't have the real strong flavor. I have a tendency to try to use olive oil, another reason, because it's supposed to be healthy, but take a look at me. Am I interested in all this healthy stuff? I eat healthier, but not completely.
Well, olive oil is an analgesic, so it's a painkiller.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
When in the directions that we had before we got the actual recipe, there was an instruction that I didn't get. Maybe it wasn't yours. Believe it or not.
Wow.
Look.
See how kind of lumpy they are? These are definitely overproofed and they're flattened. So I wouldn't leave them in the refrigerator.
Actually, the sesame one looks fuller.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? I have no idea why. But now
I'd still eat them. I'll eat them.
Send one over.
Yeah, 21 Dickinson Avenue, Carlisle.
1 Lennox Avenue, Stirling, Scotland. And Pat should know she's been there. If she remembers.
Oh my God, do I remember?
So do we.
So to our neighbours.
We'll be back, hopefully this year, hopefully 2022.
Yes.
Okay, so that's it. You just cut them in half, stick it in the toaster or not, put smear all over them and enjoy them.
Oh, wow. Thanks a million, Marian. This is so good of you to do this. And you had them all ready, just like Martha Stewart.
Well, I was trying to think of how you could do it in just one lesson, you know?
Yeah,
So,
Marian, you lost your picture.
oh,
There you
there you are.
yeah. So, but worked out well.
So this will be a YouTube, which I will post, and that way, when you're going to make them, you'll also be able to have the YouTube. So
yeah.
you can pause it and get to the point, pause it, do the thing she tells you to do. Then,
Well, Jamie, you may become a YouTube sensation.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could. I mean, this was really great. If you didn't have the hecklers,
I don't mind the hecklers at all. The hecklers are fun.
we're like the old men from the Muppet Show, Statler and Waldorf or whatever.
Waldorf, yeah, Statler and Waldorf, whatever. Yeah, no, it's fun. I just really like to bake. I like to cook. I like all the stuff about it.
Like to cook, like to eat.
Like to cook, like to eat, which is very obvious. But anyway,
Thank you.
that's why I walk 2 miles every day. Because I sit there going, I am going to work this off later on. I'm not going to get any thinner, but I won't get any worse. That's how
As long as you feel healthy, that's
yeah. And I feel pretty healthy,
Oh, that's
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, thanks for coming.
oh,
Thanks for inviting.
Yeah.
oh yeah, this was great. Yeah,
That was really good.
that's great.
Now I want everyone to post a picture of their bagels when they make them.
Yeah.
You got it? You
Well,
got
I've got all my ingredients here, so I'm gonna have to, I measured them out and everything. So I'm gonna have to make them, or
There you
get
go.
them in the fridge tonight.
That's right.
And
That's
I'll make them in the morning.
yeah. Good idea. Good idea.
Good. If you don't see them, it's because I failed. But,
Oh.
yeah.
You won't. All right.
Ah.
Take care, everybody.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for putting it all together, Pat.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Anytime. If someone wants to do the next one, let me know. I'll put it together again.
Okay.
Good
Good
on
night.
for that.